Lizzie Borden writes, "My parents were murdered in 1892, and though I was arrested and tried, I was acquitted of the crime. But for more than 120 years, my name has been synonymous with one of the most atrocious crimes in history. How do I clear my name and show history that I'm an innocent woman?" So we're going to do a spread for Lizzie Borden on this very topic, and we're going to do 4 cards. We're going to let the first card represent why people think she's guilty. We'll let the second card represent what she can do to change their minds. The third card will represent a challenge she's going to face in making that change. And then the fourth card will be a general piece of advice. So, as usual, we've already shuffled here, so let me move these over to the side. And the first card is the Sun reversed. The second card is Temperance reversed. The third card is the Queen of Wands reversed. And then we've got the Nine of Cups. So I'll just pull back so we can see that. And then we'll dig right in. And we'll start with the Sun reversed. So again, this card represents why people think she's guilty. And in this position, with this card, my instinct is to say out of the gate that the reason people think that she's guilty is because they're in the dark. And that's just a fairly simple oppositional response to the card. But sometimes they come out that way. Sometimes you don't overthink it. Distance and time make it harder to know the truth. And I think that the Sun reversed confirms that. And I think it confirms the very natural human tendency we have to see the worst rather than the best. Folks, in particular in modern life, don't have a very sunshiny attitude about anyone convinced of a crime. We don't have an innocent until proven guilty world anymore. Think of all the people who, whether or not it seems true, who think of O.J. As being guilty. Of course, he was acquitted, so legally he's innocent. But of course, most of us, I would say me included, don't necessarily believe that. And I think the Sun card kind of indicates our natural attention to look for our natural inclination to look for the worst. I think we're so used to seeing the grim that we're going to look at people that way. And I think in this country, people in particular have become pretty jaded. And I think this card bears that out. So I think that's why people think she's guilty. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with her guilt or innocence, but just the way we, as a society, view anyone accused of anything. The next card is what you can do to change minds, and we have Temperance reversed. We have 3 reversed cards here, which is interesting. With Temperance, when it comes up reversed, I often think of it in terms of intemperance, which again is another sort of simplistic answer to this card, but it just seems to make sense in this case. But actually, or with this card rather, but in this case, I think the reversal says something about the sort of magical thing that the card does. When the card is upright, what we're dealing with here is we have this angel who is literally making the impossible happen, pouring this water from one cup into another in a way that's not entirely possible. She uses her concentration and the act of faith and power to make the impossible happen. It's an act of magic. And so reversed, and again, this may seem a little simplistic, but my instinct is to say that the card suggests that there really is no magic trick you can use to change people's minds. If it's possible, you're going to have to rely on a more logical source, but certainly within the confines of what you're dealing with, there's no simple, magical, easy way to make things happen. And that's sort of a non-answer, because this is a question of what can you do, and this is sort of saying what you can't do. So I'm going to do something I'm doing more and more of, but something I was always told I shouldn't, but I find that it helps, which is to just ask for a little more information. So I'm going to bring a sort of subtext card in here, and we've got the Seven of Swords reversed. And I actually think that this underscores the idea that there's really no tricky, easy way to change people's minds. There's no easy way to help. You can't sneak in and change history, or at least change people's perception of history. And looking at these two cards together, this is one of those times where I think the reading is saying something we don't want to hear, which is that you can't change what people think of you. Perception is reality. You can't do it alone, at least. The lack of magical options, certainly, and the lack of tricky techniques available may mean that you have to rely on other people who have more earthbound capabilities. Now, because Lizzie's dead, she's going to have a difficult time. She's in a tricky position. She can't mount a campaign. So she may have to wait until others come to her defense. Now, swords always make me think of pens, and the mind, of course, is associated with them. So maybe if there's one thing she can do, it's to whisper in the ear of some really intelligent, influential writer and get that person to dig in and find a defense that will really ring in the ears of modern America. But changing the minds of modern Americans is a pretty Promethean task. So the third card, or the third official card, is what the challenge is in making this happen. I think the first challenge is given the disappointing nature of the sort of what can you do, and the answer is sort of really nothing. I think the first implied challenge is accepting that fact, that you may not be able to actively influence the opinion of others in this case. Then the challenge becomes the natural inclination to maybe act like the Queen of Wands reversed. Erratic, overly passionate, angry, quick-tempered, over-dramatic. When I see the Queen of Wands reversed, I always think of the sort of stereotypical diva, because wands are fiery and creative and that sort of thing. It makes me think of Maria Callas, and other characters in history known to fly off the handle in that way. Now, whether that was just a perception is another issue, but that's what they're known for, and that's what it makes me think of. It seems like this may be an instinct for you, to fly off the handle, particularly when listening to someone like me say, there's not a lot you can do about it. You may hear me say this and say he's out of his mind, of course there's something I can do, he doesn't know what he's talking about, and may make you want to throw things. Which leads me to ask, if temper is an issue for you, does that have anything to do with why people think you're guilty? But that said, the challenge for you is to turn this around, to act like the Queen of Wands in her upright position, a powerful, creative, leonine presence. If we're thinking in terms of sort of historical role models here, instead of the quicksilver passions of a Maria Callas type, maybe we're thinking of someone more austere, creative still, maybe a Meryl Streep, certainly a genius, creative, powerful, but someone who you really don't hear diva stories about. Meryl Streep isn't known for that kind of behavior, or maybe she is and I just haven't heard of it, but that kind of behavior of what we stereotypically assume Meryl Streep acts like might be the way to go. The challenge is to stay calm, brilliant, alert even, so that if any opportunities come your way, your fiery creativity is going to be able to turn them to your advantage rather than against you. And that's a key. Because if you're acting erratic and dramatic and throwing fits, you're going to miss opportunities. So the final card is just a word of advice. And here we have the only upright card, and that is the Nine of Cups. And I think this suggests stopping to take stock of what you have right now. Either those who believe that you're innocent, or in your own knowledge that you're innocent, or that you came out the other side of something. But you're literally surrounded by wonderful things. And you went through this terrible ordeal, and you came out of it. And maybe life would have been grander had that not happened. Maybe we'd be looking at the Ten of Cups here rather than the Nine. But with all that, things are pretty good. And deep down, I would wager that within you've managed to muster an emotional bank account in which there's a lot of deposits. Rather than focusing on what you can't control, what in your existence right now is something you can focus on and actively enjoy. Now, given that 4 of the 5 cards that we wound up with here are reversed, I get the sense that this is something that really drags you down and that really pulls you over yourself and makes you feel stalled. And that's understandable. It's really a terrible thing to go down in history for something that awful. But you survived it. I think that's something that's important to think about. So, and maybe I think that's the message of the 9 in this case. What can you take away from this and move forward so that you can enjoy the next phase of your existence? I think the 9 of Cups suggests there's something. I would meditate on that and see what you can come up with. It really could be a powerful way to unlock and unstick yourself from a really disappointing past. So just to recap really quickly, we start with the Sun, which was in the position of talking about why people think she's guilty. And the Sun seems to indicate, I think, that it's really about people being in the dark. People may be prone to seeing the darker aspects of humanity and our just natural human jadedness, particularly in modern life. The second card represented what Lizzie can do to make the change in people's perception of her, and the Temperance reversed seems to speak to the fact that there is no magical way to do this. The Angel in Temperance does the impossible. The reversal here seems to indicate that the impossible really is impossible. And supported here by another card that we drew, the 7 of Swords, reversed, says maybe there's no tricky way to do this. Maybe this combination of these two together says Lizzie really can't change perceptions. Not herself anyway. Maybe there's some influential mind who has the creative trickiness in modern life that she can sort of whisper into to write a campaign on her behalf, but it's not something she's going to be able to do on her own. The third card, which is the challenge, is really to accept that idea of not being able to change people's perceptions in a mature, austere way that also allows Lizzie to use the creativity that she has within to look for opportunities so they don't pass her by while she's busy throwing a fit. To sort of avoid diva reactions to things. That's what this card seems to say. And then finally, a piece of advice here, we have the 9 of Cups. And I think that suggests looking for those things in life that, or in this case, the afterlife, that really are enjoyable and that speak to successes. And that despite everything that's happened, Lizzie came out of this awful situation in a richer way, and not just because she inherited money from her dead parents. That there are things that she's surrounded with good, and if she can focus on that and try to let go of this past that's sort of holding her and turning her upside down, that maybe there's a way to move on, thinking about those things that she achieved, that she has now, and that she can enjoy, and then really enjoying those things. So, there we have our reading for Lizzie Borden, and we hope this offers her a little bit of comfort in this really difficult past.